In Renaissance Italy, holiness and sin waltzed in shadows. A young girl's purity was traded for power. Her name, Lucrezia Borgia, still echoes with dread 5 centuries later. Born into corruption, her father wore the Pope's crown while turning her into a pawn in a wicked game. How does a holy man destroy his own child? The answer lies in a tale soaked in ambition, lust, and betrayal. Lucrezia's story begins not with joy, but with a tragedy that would haunt history. In 1480, Rome welcomed a baby girl. But Lucrezia wasn't just another birth. She was born into a church where virtue had become a farce. Her father, Rodrigo Borgia, would one day become Pope Alexander VI, one of the most corrupt men to ever rule the Vatican. Long before donning papal robes, Rodrigo schemed from the shadows, weaving his children into the fabric of his ambitions. Lucrezia, though illegitimate, was never hidden. She was polished, prepared, and presented as a living treaty, her beauty a tool of political war. The Renaissance glowed with art, yet rotted with vice. In the Papal States, power was everything. Morality, optional. Cardinals sold sacred offices, plotted murders, and kept mistresses. The Borgias didn't hide from this sin. They mastered it. Born to Rodrigo and his mistress, Vanosa, Lucrezia's illegitimacy should have cursed her to obscurity. Instead, it made her essential. Unlike forgotten bastard children, Lucrezia was a prized asset, groomed from infancy to serve as currency in the Borgia Empire. In her world, poison hid in every goblet. Assassins lurked in corners. Even churches offered no refuge from political schemes. The Vatican, once holy, hosted orgies. Papal apartments echoed with the sounds of sin. Even murder became diplomacy. Thrust into this depravity, Lucrezia became a player in a brutal game before she knew the rules. A German court chronicler, Johann Burchard, witnessed it all, including a feast where 50 courtesans crawled naked, gathering chestnuts for the Pope's amusement. These weren't myths. They were her daily reality. Her schooling was not in prayer, but survival among predators. By 11, she had been engaged twice. Each engagement wasn't about love, it was about leverage. She wasn't a daughter, she was a treaty, a commodity, a tool for power dressed in silk and gold. In 1492, her father bought the papacy. Bribes flowed like wine. Even the corrupt were shocked by how brazen it was. Rodrigo became Pope Alexander VI, and for Lucrezia, childhood officially ended. At 13, she was married to Giovanni Sforza. It wasn't a wedding, it was a war pact. She was stunning, with golden hair and grace beyond her years. But her beauty was a weapon, not a gift. Even her wedding bed was stage managed. Some said her father demanded detailed reports of the consummation. Others whispered he wanted to witness it himself. Whether true or not, her privacy was shattered. When the Sforza alliance soured, Pope Alexander sought an annulment. Giovanni struck back with poison rumors and incest claims. He said the Pope wanted Lucrezia back to himself. It sounded mad, yet in Borgia, Rome, madness was ordinary. To nullify the marriage, Lucrezia was examined to prove she was still a virgin after 3 years with her husband. Her body became evidence in a courtroom of power. Her trauma, a legal argument. Her brother Cesare Borgia was worse than their father. Brilliant, violent, and obsessed with control. Cesare didn't just kill enemies, he terrified even allies. His power was matched only by his rumored lust for his sister. When Lucrezia married Alfonso of Aragon, happiness briefly bloomed. She bore a son. For a moment, she was just a wife and mother. But happiness threatened control. And in Borgia politics, control was everything. Alfonso was attacked near St. Peter's. As he recovered, Lucrezia guarded him. But Cesare had other plans. What wasn't done at lunch, Cesare said, would be done at dinner. Soon after, Alfonso was strangled in bed. Lucrezia's tears over his corpse marked the last time she wept in public. Something inside her broke. The palace whispered of incest, jealous rage, and a mysterious infant called infans romanus. Father unknown, mother unspoken. Some claimed Cesare was the father. Others said it was the Pope. Everyone avoided asking who the mother was. At 21, Lucrezia married Alfonso d'Este of Ferrara. But this time, she negotiated her own terms. She asked for power, for respect, for distance from Rome's grasp. And she got it. Far from her family, she became something new. A ruler, a patron, a survivor. In Ferrara, Lucrezia forged a new identity. She built a court filled with poets, artists, and scholars. Power, at last, was hers. She ruled in her husband's absence with grace and skill. The girl who had been a pawn became a duchess. Her father's death in 1503 drew no tears. Just a quiet nod and a swift move to protect her position. The man who gave her life and stole her soul was gone. And Lucrezia did not mourn him. Cesare's fall came quickly after. With no pope to shield him, enemies closed in. He fled, fought, and died far from power. Lucrezia wore mourning clothes longer than expected. Grief, guilt, or one last performance. In Ferrara, she was respected, admired. Her past whispered behind her, but her rule spoke louder. She became fluent in Latin, wrote letters to scholars, and filled her home with music and thought. Still, the past haunted her body. She endured at least 11 pregnancies, many ending in loss. Each miscarriage a reminder, her body was never hers. It was used, broken, and pushed past its limits. But her surviving children became her hope. She tried to give them the freedom she was denied. She watched them carefully, afraid they might carry the Borgia stain. She feared the cycle might repeat, that history would swallow them, as it had swallowed her. Her letters from this time speak of art, faith, and sorrow, but rarely of her youth. She never wrote of the chestnut feast, the annulments, or the murders. Some memories silence the tongue. With Alfonso d'Este, a real marriage blossomed. He came to admire her strength and trust her decisions. Together, they had children who would carry on the Este name. At last, she fulfilled her purpose on her terms. Her final pregnancy in 1519 proved fatal. She gave birth to a daughter who died shortly after. Lucrezia followed days later, at 39, lost to fever and exhaustion. Her body could give no more. Ferrara mourned her. They buried not a villain, but a duchess, a mother, a patron. Her death was quiet. No scandal, no spectacle. Just a woman, finally at peace. Witnesses say she faced death calmly, settling her affairs with care. Her final breath was not filled with fear. The priests who stood by her deathbed belonged to a church very different from her father's. Lucrezia never poisoned anyone. The ring of death was legend. No proof ever surfaced. The femme fatale image came from enemies, from writers who found truth too boring, lies more thrilling. She was called wicked, but lived through wickedness. Her tragedy was survival, not villainy. Modern historians now see her not as monster, but as victim. A girl used by powerful men. The incest rumors? Born of slander and the stink of Borgia reputation, not evidence. Her father turned her into a symbol, but never a person. Her brother wanted to own her, not protect her. She lived under control, watched love turn to violence, and learned that safety was an illusion. That she ruled anything at all was a miracle. That she created beauty from horror was a rebellion. Her story isn't about poison, it's about what happens when power devours love. She lived the nightmare behind the Renaissance dream, the darkness beneath the light of genius. The same world that birthed Da Vinci also birthed the Borgia papacy. Lucrezia's life forces us to ask, can anyone survive such power untouched? She leaves us no easy answers, just questions, scars, and echoes. She was a daughter, a sister, a bride, a mother, but never free. She existed within a web spun before her birth. Every step controlled, every choice an illusion. And yet, she created space, a sliver of self, within that prison. She wrote, she ruled, she raised children, she endured. Lucrezia Borgia is not remembered for surviving, but she should be. She lived what would destroy others. She bore what no one should. And in the end, she died with more dignity than she was ever granted in life. History made her a villain, but forgot her pain. The truth was too grim, the lie too tempting. The poison ring, the seductions, that's what audiences wanted. Accursed beauty sells better than a caged child. But Lucrezia's real story is far more disturbing. She was a girl denied choices, stripped of self. She was shaped by others, molded by power, and blamed for surviving it. Her tragedy wasn't in scandal, it was in silence. Her screams were buried under centuries of myth. She was raised to be controlled, and when she resisted, they called her corrupt. She never asked for her life. She just learned how to live it. Her strength wasn't in sin, it was in survival. Modern scholars now see her as a case study in trauma, a woman crushed by systems far greater than herself. She became a mirror for every oppressed girl, every silenced voice. Lucrezia's legacy isn't poison, it's endurance. She proved that even in hell, a woman could find moments of grace. Even when treated like property, she built beauty. She became the thing they never expected, a ruler. Her story exposes the Renaissance not just as an age of brilliance, but of brutality. Power cloaked in gold, faith used for fear. And in its center, a girl who was never safe. The church failed her. Her family used her. History lied about her, but still she mattered. Her suffering speaks to the suffering of countless others. Forgotten women, silent victims, lost names. Lucrezia had a name, and she made it mean something, not through sin, but through strength. She was forced to play a role, yet she slipped lines of truth into her performance. She never got to speak freely, but she left behind whispers, letters, gestures, choices, each one a rebellion. When she died in 1519, the bells didn't toll for a monster. They tolled for a mother, a duchess, a survivor. She was many things, but most of all, she was human. That history made her a villain says more about us than about her. We prefer our women wicked, not wounded, dangerous, not damaged. But Lucrezia was both, broken and brave. And her voice, long silenced, still echoes. If we listen closely, we might hear what she was never allowed to say. Not a poisoner, not a temptress, just a girl who was never given a chance.